All right. Hello and welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Leadership, the podcast where leadership begins at the center. I am Carrie Terhark, your host, and I believe in order to lead others effectively, we must first learn to lead ourselves. This segment is called Beyond the Title, where we have conversations to explore raw, unscripted, behind the scenes stories of people discovering how to turn their passion into purpose. They will share their practices, insights, and tools that help you stay centered, resilient, and ready to empower those in your care. Leadership isn't just a role, it's a choice, and it starts with showing up for yourself. So let's dive in. So I am super excited to have this conversation. Dr. Katie Thomas is joining us today. I was connected to Katie through another mutual contact. We had a short, brief conversation, and I just knew that the information and the things that you have are so helpful to me, but to a lot of our listeners. So thank you for being here, Katie.
Oh, thank you. That was a nice introduction, Carrie.
So I always start this podcast with the same question, which is what lights your fire? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Uh, what gets me out of bed is my generation, thinking about empowering my generation. And I feel like such a dork for saying that, but I really, really love millennials. I really, really believe that my generation, those of us born between 1980 and 2000, have a special role in the world today. We have a lot of work to do as a country, as a society, and I really believe that our generation, my generation, is going to help shepherd in a lot of new ways of thinking, particularly in leadership and organizations, so we can all be a little bit more human centered in our daily lives, in our communities, and in our companies. So that's
Yeah.
what's lighting my fire. It's been lighting my fire for like 15 years. So
I'm so looking forward to this conversation. I love this conversation. I love the conversation of understanding the generations. And I am
mhm.
officially Gen X.
Okay.
So 78, my brother is a millennial.
Yep.
So being able to kind of live in both worlds where, and also being rural Midwest, living a lot of the Gen X childhood, but then also living a lot of the millennial as I got into adulthood and the people that I was surrounded with. So it's kind of
Mhm.
right on that side. And when you look at it from a perspective of leadership, and like you said, what does that mean for millennials when you say what's so different about millennials than maybe what we've seen in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm glad that you asked that too. And I think I want to point out two things. There's the millennial mindset, which it sounds like you have begun to adapt over your adult life. And then there's the millennial generation that kind of has that mindset. It's important to note that millennials actually make up 36% of the workforce today. And so these are people, like I mentioned earlier, that were born between 1980 and 2000. We're the bridge generation. So we're tech savvy. Like I grew up with dial up. So I really have, since I was very young, been adapting to new technologies on the regular. And so I'm naturally tech savvy, though I don't think I'm as tech savvy as a Gen Zer. They are much more quickly to adapt to new technologies, which is wonderful. And millennials know how to harness that energy because we have that inside of us as well. Um, what things make millennials very unique? Not only is it they're digital natives and they're very adaptable to technology, but they're very purpose driven. Millennials are seeking meaningful work that aligns with their values. And so, if you just imagine how you place them into an organization where there's different values systems, it can be really hard for them to adjust. There's also this natural ability to integrate work with life, in that because we are so flexible with technology, we really enjoy that flexibility to be able to not just simply work from home, but just um, be able to contribute to our organization in a meaningful way because we have that purpose driven. But that's actually a fault of ours. And when we get into the blind spots later, that can actually be kind of harmful. And then the other thing is really craving growth and feedback. Millennials are a highly collaborative generation. We are the most ethnically and culturally diverse generation of all time. And so because we are a multi-race, multi-cultured generation, we are naturally able to accommodate the views of other cultures and values. And so in a lot of ways, that can bring conflict into the workplace as well. But it is a positive trait because we can be very innovative, because we can take in the nuances of different perspectives, because we have that natural ability to adapt to different perspectives across cultures and ethnicities. Um, Millennials like to challenge traditional paths because we so are inherently human centered, because of these unique characteristics and ways that we were brought up and things that we experienced when we were in our formative years. Um, we really challenge traditional pathways, and so that can bring conflict into the workplace as well, because we're saying to, like, let's say the way things are always done around here, they aren't working anymore. These are broken systems. We can be way more efficient, and we can be way more inclusive as an organization. And so we do challenge a lot of the status quo. And I think that's something that I'm here to help encourage more millennials to do, because if we stop challenging the status quo, just we get complacent or we get lazy, then we don't see positive change in the world, and we can't make a more impactful change in society and to the businesses that we're working in. And the last thing I would add is very much an entrepreneurial spirit, in that millennials, if you're not going to do it my way, if you won't let me lead and do it my way, I'm just going to do it myself. So we have a lot of that ingrained entrepreneurial spirit in this generation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too. And you just think about the times and the experiences from early childhood, right? Because our experiences shape who we are. They shape how, we think, or, what we might think is possible. And you think all the way back to, the silent generation coming out of, the Great Depression, and life is about survival, right? You just kind of did what you needed to do to kind of, survive. And I then has watched my baby boomer parents commit their life to one job, and everything, all my eggs are in this one basket, and I'm going to dedicate my life, to work. And then kind of, the Gen X, where it was just like, I just, leave me alone. It's like, I gotta figure it out. Everybody just, stay in your own lane, figure it out, don't talk. But there has been a big shift in this millennial generation that I love to see the innovation. I love to see the entrepreneurs. I love to see that ability to say yes and, right? Like, what are we going to do together? Like, I'm not just here to dedicate my life to your organization. I want to make a difference. I want my values to be aligned, like you said, and I want to see what we can do to make things better. And if that doesn't work, then I'm going to go find somewhere else to go. And I think from my work working with organizations, it's kind of catching up the organizational culture to that space where it's like, you could really leverage and take your organization to a whole nother level if you're really just embracing the ability to see, right? To be like that they're how we function and how we communicate with each other, our expectations of one another. We could do so much more if we really just understood.
Yeah. And you're providing services to businesses, right? So you're working with organizations to help them work better together.
Yes. So I do a lot of facilitation training and bring processes that help groups listen and talk from their own experiences. So now I can understand what my perspective is, and I understand what your perspective is. And now I can be innovative together because I have a broader sense of data to work from.
Nice. And so do you find yourself working with multi-generational teams often?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's great. And do you find it to be challenging, or what are some of the things that you come across that are challenges across generations?
Yeah, it is a lot of times it's just kind of what you said. This is the way that we've always done it. and this makes more sense, or this is more efficient, or why are we doing this? And I do a lot of strategic planning with organizations, and one of the things that's really important to do is kind of have that historical data, right? So that everybody understands, how did we get here? Like, what are the things that led us to here? And it's helpful for those that have been here a long time, that carry that institutional knowledge that just is only lives within their own head, right? It's not written down anywhere. It's not part of the onboarding process. And when we can have that conversation together, you can kind of see a lot of times people who have been within an organization a long time looking at something and going, yeah, why do we do that?
Yep. Yeah.
I never really thought about it. It was just what we did.
Yeah, I've told this story a lot. Like when a millennial enters in an organization, or even any new person to a company walks into a company for the first time, and maybe it's a new job and they're looking around, they're going to be asking, why do you do it this way? Why do you do that way? And like the analogy that I use is, when a millennial walks in, they can see the graffiti on the wall. They can see that so brightly and boldly, and whereas all the other staff don't see it anymore, even the leaders don't even see it anymore. And so the millennial comes in and they ask why, and that can put a lot of pressure on everyone else to figure out why, or to maybe even begin to be defensive as to why. And that can be really hard to facilitate. So I have some wisdom for business owners. If you think that would be useful for your listeners, I'm happy to share a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when you have, let's say these are new millennials in your organization, or these are millennials who have been there for a while, this is some tips that might help you better understand where they're coming from. So the first thing is their purpose. So, and I'll start this actually with a story. So if it's safe, close your eyes. Kira, I'm sure you could, but this is a story that I like to tell because it really brings home what the millennial is feeling with regard to their purpose. So imagine you're walking down the street and you see three masons working. And you ask the first mason, what are you doing? And she says, I'm laying bricks. And you ask the second mason, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building a wall. And you ask the third mason, what are you doing? And she says, I'm building a cathedral. Okay. The third mason is your millennial, right? Yes, they're laying bricks. You can open your eyes. Yes, they're laying bricks. They're all doing the same task. It's one step at a time towards a larger goal, but that millennial wants to connect that purpose to that cathedral. So think about ways that you as a leader can inspire your young professionals and show them how this task gets to the outcome that you're building towards in your organization. And you will retain that person, as long as your mission isn't, screwing people over or being dishonest or unethical, because millennials are truly heart-centered, majority are heart-centered individuals, and they really do want to make a positive impact, just like you were saying, Carrie. So that would be my first, that's an easy win. That's something that a frontline manager can do every day with their staff, or every time you have a one-on-one with them, is to have a conversation about mapping the task to the outcome and how the outcome helps the organization. And then the second thing really is around flexibility, and how flexibility actually is going to drive performance. And the reason is, some companies, I'm not sure about in your area, but I live in a rural part of Northern Illinois, and a lot of the companies are manufacturing companies, and or banking, or really industries that you need to be present in the office. And that can be, a hard sell for some people, especially millennials right now, because what are we? We're parents. We have young kids right now. We're trying to figure it all out, and we have aging parents. So we're kind of like in this really intense squeeze of our lives. And so flexibility really does drive performance. So juxtapose that with that baby boomer mindset, where you show up every day at 8 o'clock, you work until you're done, and then you clock out and you go home. And right now, millennials all have their work emails on their phones. the flexibility is going to drive performance. It's going to allow them the trust and autonomy they need to deliver you the excellent results that you're looking for in your organization. So obviously adapt it to whatever your industry is and what the expectations are for your organization. But think about ways you can provide hybrid work experiences. Maybe if they're remote friendly, or maybe they're just a little bit more flexible, and you have policies to help support that to increase the loyalty. Like if somebody has to go pick up their kids and drop them off at grandma's, they can do that and come back, or they can work remotely for the rest of the afternoon, or whatever it works for your organization. But just don't shy away from the conversation of how do you adapt to this 21st century lifestyle that these high top performers are in your organization. um, the third thing I would share is feedback. It actually fuels growth. I know millennials can be a little bit needy when it comes to needing feedback and wanting feedback because we are so collaborative. But it's really important to give feedback and learn ways to give short, frequent check-ins, that you're not just leaving an employee for a year and then you're going to do your annual review. Like, think about ways that you can teach your managers, people who are managing, especially millennials and Gen Zs, how you can provide short, meaningful feedback that actually is authentic and fuels their growth. Because remember, like, a lot of millennials, like, I'm 40 years old, I have 20 years of work experience, but the youngest millennial is 25 years old right now. So these are people who are relatively early in their career. So they're building that expertise, and they do need training and coaching. That's why the manager's coaching mindset is so useful, for younger generations, because we're still learning and growing and adapting. Whereas juxtaposition that to a Gen Xer, where you said earlier, you just kind of have to figure it out and get it done on your own. So if you are a Gen Xer and you have millennials on your team, you need to really work hard at building that coaching mindset, and know that your staff, if you have really high turnover and you can't keep staff on your team, it's probably because you're not coaching them or giving them enough growth opportunities through feedback and authentic connection. So one little tidbit of advice is, if you're a Gen Xer and you're having a hard time, that could be really useful. I have three more. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, but hold on, pause, because I want to talk
Okay.
about a couple of things that you said. And one was just thinking about how we do work and the flexibility during the day. I think that's really, really important. And I know that, I went out on my business myself, started my own business 2 years ago. And one of the things that I did it because of burnout, right? Like, let's be honest, where it was like I was burnout. I felt like my values, I felt like I was losing my own values, losing myself within somebody else's dream. And it was that, like, I have to get away with it. I have to leave from this. And it wasn't that anybody was doing anything wrong. It just isn't the fit for me. And starting my own business, one of the very first things that I did was a values exercise. What are my values? What are the things these are the things that I need to build on? And what am I going to do to take care of myself? Like, what does my day look like so that I'm able to take care of myself? And I was actually thinking about this last night, with a different conversation of what would a work environment look like where you had a culture that was like, we want to make sure that you are doing what you need to do so that in the time that you're here, you're most productive. Like, when I'm at home, I travel a lot for work, but when I'm at home, there's 2 or 3 days a week that I schedule a workout in the middle of the day. That's my lunch hour. Like, I go and I do that, and I come back, and yes, I'm missing 90 minutes of my day in the middle of the day, but I'm way more productive in that last couple hours of the day than had I just sat here and continued to work through and try and push because I'm distracted and my energy's low and whatever. And it's like, when I take care of myself, I come back and I'm ready to take that on. And it's just like, what would that look like within organizations who are promoting and asking people to do that? If you take, I'm a better employee when I show up as my best self rather than just showing up because I'm here to punch a clock. And I was working with an organization, and they had pointed out, I live in northern Iowa, so very manufacturing, farming community as well. And there was a manufacturing organization in Iowa, and I want to say it's Southeast Iowa, that started a production line that only runs when school is in session. So
Ooh.
yeah. So if there's a 2 hour late start due to snow, they don't start until school's out. Like they don't spring break, they don't run. In service days, they don't run, right? And thinking about what that does, because we need the workforce, right? We hear this all the time. We don't have the workforce. And it's kind of this ability where we have workforce, but if we're working our hours that are set, we're losing our workforce because they have other things they need to take care of. We also have a
Yeah,
huge
like their
daycare
family, which
crisis,
is,
right?
yes, which is the most important
The most
thing on
important
this
thing.
entire planet is the
Yes.
families. Yes.
Yes. And just
Mm-hmm.
having this conversation and thinking about that, I was like, that is
Mm-hmm.
the innovation that we
Yeah.
need as our workforce is shrinking. Like you said, the millennials make up a very large part of
Mm-hmm.
that. I think as boomers retire, a lot of those jobs the next generation isn't going to be taking, right? So what is it, AI is coming in, what is it that we can do that is going to get that's a great experience for everybody. I just love the idea of having work hours around school hours and being
That
able to
is
say
cool.
like, yeah, you're a parent and you want to be able to take care of your kids and yet you need the extra income. Here you are. Here's a great
Yeah.
example of how
I
we
love
can.
that too because it really shows kindness and it really brings like the human side of our daily lives into our work experience. And that's an awesome innovation. That would be a cool case study to get those people and do an interview with them to see how they got to the point where they needed to establish that. And I'm sure it was probably some brave leader in their organization speaking up and working through innovative solutions. And that only happens when you can listen to people across generations and really hear and learn their perspectives. And two, when you look at that, it obviously, if they're only running when school's in session, that means they probably have less waste as an
Right.
organization. Like for example, they don't have to run from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. anymore. They're probably saving in energy. And you know what? They're probably producing a better product, whatever it is, in
Yeah.
terms of their
Well,
output. You have to think about that as well.
yeah. And I'll just say to clarify that it wasn't necessarily the whole plant, but one area, one section, but same thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're not running all of it or you have this one section that is a little bit more efficient, especially when you think about absenteeism, when you think about, people who work in workers' comp will tell you like, yeah, the higher, the more we're pushing people, the more absenteeism, the more workers' comp claims that we have, right? If we can help people and support people, individuals, it's going to help your bottom line. And that's what I
Yeah.
love. I think that's the mind shift that we've been in to kind of where we're going. And it's really cool to see.
And I'd love to piggyback on that and add that it's not even when you help people, you're helping their families because
Yes.
when you're helping families, you're helping community. And when you're helping community, that is going to make our country really thrive again, especially in these middle states where a lot of the towns and jobs are kind of sleepy and there's not a lot of opportunity. But I think that's going to bring more businesses in. I know you do some work in economic development. I've connected with the folks in my small Midwestern town about that. And it's like, no, we are families, we are community. And when we work together to hear what each other's needs are, we can really build more robust and more abundant
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other thing that you were kind of talking about is kind of the leader manager as coach. And
Mm-hmm.
I really I've seen that take place. I worked for a couple of years. I was working as a coalition director here in our town, and then a really great friend of mine owns our grocery store. So I was working as a shift lead at their store to help out. And my nephew was working there, and great kid, right? And I remember having a conversation with somebody who was like, I sent this kid to go do something and they didn't do it right. They didn't come back. And I was like, okay, yeah. What did you do? Like, did you go tell them to go, go mow, but did you not tell them the like restrictions of how you actually wanted it done? And I was like, I know it sounds crazy, but I had to show my nephew how to mop, because it's just not
Right.
something like go show, right? And
Hmm.
practice and be part of it,
Teach. Hmm.
teach, right? Rather than
Yeah.
just kind of like go figure it out, go do it, and then come back, and then I'm gonna, complain to you that you didn't do it right.
Do it right. Yeah.
Let's be more efficient in how we're instructing and building that relationship and that mentorship. I think is really important, and I've loved to see mentorship even both ways, right? So not just
Yeah.
someone who's
Reverse
been in an
mentoring.
organization, yeah, because I think there's
Hmm.
so many things that we can learn from new people coming into the workforce that are helping us be more efficient in the way that we work.
Yeah, absolutely. I get a lot of my leadership teaching, coaching, inspiration from being a mom. So I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they basically know nothing, right? They know nothing until they're taught. And that is a really great reminder that, you can use that frame of reference when you have a new employee on your staff. It's, they know nothing. They literally like treat them with kid gloves, with respect, obviously. Like they're not children, they're adults, but in the sense that, start from the very beginning and be super, straightforward about it. And if it's a highly technical job, take even more care around safety and precautions. Like it's unfortunate that there isn't a lot of really robust training programs. And I was actually recording. I have a podcast as well. It's called the Dr. Katie Show, and it is focused around millennials and ways to navigate up to an executive level. And anyways, I had a gentleman on. He's a Gen Xer, and he was telling me about a situation in his organization, and it just reminds me so much of this moment. How when we take time to explain, we build not only a strong employee and we teach them, but we're also building and strengthening relationships. So now they know how to teach the next person that comes in and really taking the time. We're very, very much in this 21st century life, 2025, rushing. I feel like, especially now that AI is like everywhere and everyone's using ChatGPT, everything is instant, instant, instant. And it's so not human. And we're like almost like our energy is like mimicking the speed at which AI is producing content for us. But it's like, we are still humans and we still need to take time to breathe and have connection. And if our life is devoid of that, then you have a lot of disease and stress and high turnover and lack of efficiencies and really costs that businesses these days can't afford to have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. So tell me a little, you had a couple more points that you wanted to make, and I wanted to make
I
sure we
did have
got that.
Yeah, well, these are so back to it. So, this is the advice for the wisdom for business owners and leaders and organizations. You've got millennials that are working in your company. I told you the first three, those are purpose. Purpose is retention. The second one is flexibility drives performance. The third, feedback fuels growth. And then the next one, which I haven't mentioned yet, is called invest in learning, which we did touch on a little bit naturally because it's just part of the conversation. Leadership tracks and skill building reduce turnover. So if you can show the individuals in your organization that there's a pathway to leadership, they're going to be more adept to stay. So not that you have to have, depending on what size company you are in, and some small businesses, you know it just doesn't seem like there's any future for them. But if you can show them that in time, as the business grows, we're going to be expanding, and then you might be able to train the next person, right? And so there's a lot of ways that you can invest in in your individuals by showing them that we're investing in you now, by teaching you, by educating you, and we want you to stay. We don't, maybe what those future position is. Like you'll become a manager, then a director, and then a vice president. But give them some sort of pathway. Give them don't dangle a carrot that isn't there, right?
Yeah.
But with realistic authentic expression of what does the future look like at this company, that's really important. Like my husband runs a family business, and I'm just hired on a young millennial, and he really wanted to work at a company where there was a future. And that was really something that came through in the interview process. I'm like, great, because you need a great secondhand man. Like, you need someone who's going to have your back. And maybe he's got a couple years before he's ready to do that. But you need somebody that you can hand off your workload to and go on vacation. Because, small
Right.
family business, you're not taking very many vacations, not in a Midwest company. Who's going to milk the cows if you're out of town?
Exactly.
So it's just invest in that learning, give people an opportunity to envision what a future career will look like. The next one is visibility matters. So really recognize these individuals' contribution publicly and motivate and retain them. There's a lot of really creative ways that you could do this depending on what kind of company you are, what's your company culture. You can do things like, something as simple as employee of the month or employee of the week. And if you have a small HR department, this is something that's really easy to facilitate. Um, Actually, someone I interviewed on my podcast, again, he keeps coming back. His name is Matt Reich. He wrote a book called The HR Bible. And in it, he talks about really simple, free ways that HR departments can visibly recognize and celebrate individuals, even through social media. So if you have a LinkedIn for your business, all your employees are on LinkedIn, you can celebrate this person on LinkedIn. And you can say, hey, Carrie's being celebrated this month for her performance on this project. And we just want to really put a nice picture of Carrie up and celebrate, and then show recognition publicly. And maybe this has to do with us being, the first selfie generation. We want to be the first, we were the first ones to go on MySpace and Facebook. So we're really used to being very visible with our communities, and we like that. And I think that helps celebrate our accomplishments. So that would be something that I would recommend as well. And so the last thing is entrepreneurship opportunities. Are you familiar with the term entrepreneurship?
Was it entrepreneurship within the organization, finding new
Yes.
creative ways to, yes,
Yes,
new business
exactly.
opportunities, new things. Yes.
Yeah. So really, when I think where business owners and managers go wrong with their younger staff is to think they're just going to stay in their own lane, and they just want them to do, like, you just want them to lay bricks, right?
Yes.
Remember I told you that
Yeah.
story earlier? You just want them to lay bricks. You don't really want them to fuss with anything else. You don't have time to let them fuss with anything else. But the reality is that they're thinking and getting ideas about all the ways that they can make improvements. So you need to create an outlet for that. Now, obviously, it's to your determination what you do with that information, but you can start to cultivate that intrapreneurship and help bring new innovations and solutions to challenges into your organization in a meaningful way, and really channeling that energy. And that will help really, really well with retention. And just make sure you set up your expectations, clearly around what it is. But even do like an entrepreneurship fund. Like, you could even set aside like $500 or $1,000 for that person to use to invest in a project. And maybe they, can purchase supplies, or they can do something with, and then, then they're building, they're part of that.
Yeah.
So those are just my, what was that? 6 ways to, for business owners and leaders to just trying to transform the relationship with their younger employees if they're having a hard time with retention or engagement. Millennials aren't a problem to solve. They are a leadership pipeline to cultivate. So just something to think about.
Yeah. A couple of things in there too. I really appreciated you talking about growth opportunities, because I feel I was just working with an organization that we were doing their strategic plan, and just one of their top priorities that continued to come up was growth, upskilling, right? How are we preparing people for the next pathway within our organization? And I had a great conversation with the leader who was like, he's like, I'm getting ready to retire. And this is kind of the legacy that I want to leave, is that how important this is. And he's like, a lot of people are afraid of it, especially in the baby boomer generation, who is afraid of upskilling people because we're going to upskill them to leave. And yes, that may happen. But hopefully your culture within that organization is a place that they feel growth and they feel appreciated and they see themselves in the bigger picture and they want to stay because now they're invested in it. And if they do decide to leave in their open positions, you've got more people waiting to come into your organization because that's the way that you function, right? Where you're like, we really promote growth. We really want to, and I love the entrepreneur part of that as well, because it kind of ties in. And one of the things that when I work with organizations, that the process of which we use is to involve people in every part of your business, right? So whether it's a strategic plan or we're going through a change or we're doing something else. And I know that people are like, oh, that takes so much time. And sometimes you got to go slow to go fast, right? Because when you think about if I'm involved in something within this organization, I could see myself in it. My voice was heard as part of it. I'm invested now in it because I have contributed to it and I want to see it, right? I'm gonna find ways to help that happen. One, because I see a pathway for myself. And I can see the bigger picture. I can see, like you said, how that brick lays into what it is that we're really creating and how important my work is to that. I'm working with an organization who has grown really, really large, and they used to do strategic planning with their whole staff. And it's just gotten to the point where there's just too many people, right? There's just too many people to bring everybody in, but very intentional about having employee sessions ahead of time. So I've been spending a lot of time with their employees and having them have this opportunity. And every one of them is like, yeah, I love this. I love that I have a chance to come in, that I have a chance to share my thoughts, that I'm going to be able to see how they come out and to be able to talk to my peers about it and go, yeah, I feel that way too. Like, so it's so cool to create that community within your own organization.
Yeah, because you're connecting them with the cathedral.
Yes.
You know, they see, okay, I might be just creating these, putting these batteries in these widgets, but this is a bigger mission here.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you're doing those employee workshops that build on what is the strategy, whenever that final strategy document is created and it's ready to go, those same employees are going to see a piece of them in that. And that is going to keep them connected to that organization. It's going to keep them fulfilled. So it's going to be great for retention and effectiveness and just their overall enthusiasm for being at work. You've heard of quiet quitting, right?
Yes.
People just show up, they do the minimum just to get by. Businesses don't want that. They really don't. And I don't think employees do either. I just think we get kind of, disheartened when we don't really feel like we're heard or we're really cared about in the corporate environment that we put so much time in, and we're time away from our families and time away from our own, maybe our own desires.
Yeah. I think the being heard, being seen, being appreciated is, I mean, I don't know at any level, at any age that you are within an organization, that somebody doesn't want that. And I think sometimes when I've worked with people in the past, it's like, those who are the, the troublemakers or the people who push back or the whatever, at some point they didn't feel heard. Right.
Absolutely. So, there's always that underlying emotion, right?
Yeah.
Anger always there's always something more underneath it. And that is an unmet need.
Yeah.
So the things that I was just sharing are really, what are those unmet needs of the millennials? And if you really want them to contribute at a high level in your organization, if you really want them to stay so that you can give them more of responsibility, then, take those things into consideration. Try one or two. These aren't going to cost you anything.
Yeah. And before we go, I just want to hear a little bit about what you do to help millennials move through organizations.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I have been researching millennial work experience for about 15 years. This is definitely, I mentioned at the top of the show, but really the orientation and how I got into this role was I was in an organization that in my community at the time was like the coolest company you could work for. People work there for their whole careers, and they had the great marketing and they had, the great mission. They're a mission-driven organization, national company. And, but once I started working there, I did not feel that same vibe. And I was looking around and noticing like there was a lot of millennials that were feeling the same way. Like there wasn't really a lot of opportunity to network. There really wasn't a lot of emphasis on having a mentor and navigating all the different abundant ways you could have a career at this organization. Yet we were kind of almost that psychological contract was broken. And so that led me down a path to working on understanding why are so many millennials having such a opposite reaction when they get into the work environments. And so I decided to study this. And I actually did my doctorate research in organizational psychology, where I researched millennials and actually was working on workforce strategies to help better attract, engage, and retain millennials and consumers. And what I found in my research around the millennial employee experience, there's actually 7 blind spots that we have as a generation. And the foundational one to these 7 blind spots is health and well-being. So what I do is I help millennials unmask these blind spots, take control of their health, their well-being, and step into executive leadership positions. So when we unmask these blind spots, we can actually see how this person is being perceived by the senior leaders, the decision makers in the organization. So I actually have a 3-minute quiz. It's a free quiz. You can do this on my website. My website's moremillennialexecutives.com/quiz. I'll take you right to the quiz. And when you're there, you can unmask what is your one dominant blind spot. And you can learn how to overcome that and shift your blind spot into a strength. And basically, that's your starter point. So if you feel like you've been overlooked in your company and you really feel like you have aspirations to move into executive leadership, but you keep feeling overlooked, maybe unheard, and you want to make it up to executive level, but you also don't want to compromise your values, take this free quiz, find out what is your dominant blind spot, and see if you can turn that into a strength. I will say that if you want to learn more, there's an executive readiness diagnostic, which is more comprehensive. You can actually see what are all of your blind spots and how do they overlap. And so I use this as my proprietary assessment that I found these blind spots, through my research. And that's how I help millennials navigate into executive positions. Because when we have more millennials in executive positions, we will naturally bring more human-centered practices and policies because, we talked about what are those millennial values, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's how I do it.
Excellent. We're going to put the links in the description for you all. Make sure you check it out. I took it and it was great. And I wasn't surprised.
What was your blind spot?
What the passion, the purpose.
Overvaluing purpose.
Overvaluing purpose. And also, like I said, not surprising. I am definitely an inspiration-driven individual. And I, again, to your point, right, there's a strength in that because it led me to go out in business on my own and to be able to say, like, I want to live my purpose. I want to live in my own values. I want to, do those things. And when I started my business, I knew that I needed to really work on some systems and structures and find different ways that I just couldn't be out here all, crazy willy-nilly, seeing what comes to me, right? That there had to be, if I wanted to be successful in reaching my dream, that there needed to be some things in place.
Systems
yes.
So that's the same thing. Yeah. When you're in an organization, it can actually make you appear disengaged or misaligned. And it can stop you from being productive. And so that's great that you were able to uncover that. And I'm so happy that was useful for you.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. So yeah. So for everyone here, go ahead and take that, reach out to Dr. Katie and check out her website. Great information on there. Thank you for being here and sharing this. It's, like I said, I love to understand and the work that I do, this comes up a lot in organizations. And so it's nice to have somebody
Yes.
to refer to and be like, hey, I got somebody who can help you figure this out. So
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, I'm just a stone's throw away down in Illinois, so maybe we can
yeah,
meet up sometime.
that'd be great. We'll meet at the river.
All right, sounds
All
good.
right. Thank you all. We'll see you next time.